Hi all, welcome to the Fisher Lockdown Q&A again. You know me, Mr Flynn. I'd like to present to you today's guest, Patrick O'Grady. He's going to tell you a bit about himself. Over to you, Patrick.
Hi everyone, how you doing? My name is Patrick O'Grady. Currently, I'm the Academy Manager at London Irish. So yeah, I feel very, very privileged to be in a position like that, working with some talented young boys coming through the system. I suppose my journey was from John Fisher, where I absolutely loved my time. The rugby was just incredible, the environment, the friends. Progressed from there on to Hartbury College, where I studied sports conditioning and coaching. Obviously played in the Bucks League with them for a few years. And also they had a Saturday team working up through the leagues at the time, and they're now in the Championship. Managed to represent Gloucester in the A-League, had a few injuries, came back and played for Esher in the Championship and National 1. Managed to get back with London Irish and play in the Prem Sevens, and then injury ended my rugby, unfortunately. Operation number 22, I think it was. I've lost count, but it's around that number.
At the moment.
Yeah, exactly. And then from there just started coaching part-time for London Irish and built up from there and managed to get this role I'm in now. Nice. So yeah, that's a 30-second history of me.
Whistle-stop tour of Patrick O'Grady's rugby life.
Exactly.
So when did you join Fisher?
I joined...
What start was it?
So I joined in 2001. I joined, it was either under 14s or under 15s, so I joined a little bit later. But I'd heard about the reputation of the rugby at the school, and was just blown away by it. And everyone I spoke to about it just was so impressed and spoke so highly of the rugby. That was a massive, massive attraction for me. So yeah, I was lucky enough to get a spot, and I don't regret it at all.
Do you got any fond memories of your first day? Any teachers that stood out there and then, or?
Plenty of fond memories. I'm laughing because there's so many stories I could recall. I'm trying to dissect which ones I can talk about. I just remember straight away, like in the playground, I was with a group of people that I didn't know, and then one of the rugby lads came over and literally just grabbed hold of me and said, "Listen, you want to be over here," and just started playing a game of touch rugby in the playground, and then it was touch rugby every day in the playground from then on. And friends that I'm still in contact with now.
Nice. That's brilliant. You're still in contact with them. I mean, a lot of friend groups, they sort of disperse.
Yeah.
Go on and make uni mates, but that's great. You're still in contact with them. So after that first day, how do you think, or did it might not have done, did John Fisher help shape your character over the years you were here? And has this helped your transition into the professional sports world? And how do you think that's all linked together, or if it is at all?
Yeah, I think that's a really, really good question. So in the younger year groups, like we would take some beatings from the other schools. I remember under 14s, under 15s, we got a bit of a hammering. But then under 16s, things started to come together from a rugby point of view, and we were more competitive. And then obviously, as we went into the sixth form, I think we only lost 2 games all season. So we were used to sort of being the underdog, and we were used to having to scrap and fight for absolutely everything. So definitely throughout, like you say, like my character off the pitch and then also on the field, I've always had to, or even my teammates around me, we've always had to graft for absolutely everything. We definitely weren't the most talented year group, but we got on so well as friends. We absolutely grafted for each other. We looked after each other, and there was a real sort of bond between us. So I definitely think that hard work ethic has certainly instilled that in me, both on field and off field. And now transitioning into professional sport, that is one of the biggest factors that I see in young players coming through. You know, I've got a good number of talented players in the academy. I've got other lads who maybe aren't quite as gifted, but because of their attitude and their approach, their dedication, their work ethic, that will take them far further than those talented players. And even in my senior academy now, I'm not scared to say that there's some very, very talented players, but I could highlight the 3 or 4 boys that will go onto the first team and play regularly in the Premiership purely because of their work ethic and their attributes on that side rather than their talent.
Do you think that work ethic and that bond between the group of mates, that just rubs off on the pitch? I think what a few of the other old boys have said so far is that pride of the shirt, but also being mates is really just everything comes together once that happens.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah,
And I realised as well when I went on to play in other environments that it's probably never quite the same. Yes, you might be playing in a stadium with a crowd or whatever, but I genuinely, and I'm not just saying it because I'm on here, I genuinely don't remember the feeling of playing with your mates, your good mates who are, you know, across the field, on the bench, whatever it is, that you've genuinely got a really, really good bond with and you spend day in, day out with. Like, you'll never experience spending all day, every day with people like you do at school. And that's a massive factor. I think it's obviously tough to measure in terms of sport and how much it impacts it. But for me, it definitely had a big impact playing with my mates.
Probably be a survey going out to players, wouldn't you? Get all sorts of answers back.
Oh, yeah, definitely.
Definitely one of the reasons why I went back to Geese, I suppose, because all my mates are there and it just made it 10 times easier. Anyway, we're not talking about. Were you behaved at school? Is that a good?
Was I badly behaved? No, I don't think I was badly behaved. I'd always get in trouble probably for laughing in class because you know what it's like if something funny happens and you can't stop yourself laughing. I'm one of those people that would probably when you shouldn't laugh, I'm there laughing or talking. So I was never bad or disruptive, but just probably just enjoyed myself.
Caught in the firing line, as it were.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I'll take that one.
I've sort of touched on this a bit, but any teachers during your time here impacted you through your time here or on your journey as a moment or as a coach? Do you still in contact with any of those teachers or do you remember anyone in particular that really pushed you on through your time here?
Yeah, definitely. I remain in contact with a good number. So, listen, I love coming back to the school and catching up with everyone again. Obviously, Mr Davis was a massive part, the head of rugby. The hard man, he instilled that in us, and I even remember, I think I was in the fifth form, wasn't it, before you head up to year 12 or year 11, before you head up to year 12. I played a game up a couple of years, and I just remember straight away it was like, okay, now this is business end of the rugby. So he was great, obviously. Then just the time and effort everyone gave up. I remember we had Mr Spall early on, then we went on to Mr Lydiard and Mr Simpson.
Mm-hmm.
In terms of my coaching, yeah. In terms of my coaching, Mr Simpson was, I think, fantastic. He's very, I think, analytical. He loves the skill acquisition side of things. So for my detail that I need in my coaching environment now, I've even had conversations with him on the side of the pitch about certain things. It's just really, really interesting to hear his ideas and bounce ideas off him. Mr Hopkin, for those who remember Mr Hopkin, absolute Welsh legend. He used to regularly spend hours talking to me about Gareth Edwards, the famous Welsh scrum half. And one story I remember, I sat down for a mock exam and I literally just written my name at the top of the paper and there was a knock and I got sort of ushered over to the corner of the exam room and Mr Hopkin was there and he pulled me out for a chat. So we went and we sat down somewhere in a quiet classroom and bearing in mind I'm meant to be sitting an exam at this point, and he progresses just to talk to me about my rugby, and I think I'd just been selected for England 18. So he was talking to me about that and what Gareth Edwards would do to master certain skills. So he then let me go back to the exam, and there was about 2 minutes left. So I literally just wrote my name at the top of this mock exam paper, and that was it. Then the bell goes.
Blame the teacher, literally.
Yeah, exactly.
Simo's great. Simo's really helped me with my transition into the school. Going into teach a module that I had no idea about. He's, like you said, he's like a bloody a guru or like an oracle. He's been here for so long. He knows everything about the school, and he could probably list every John Fisher player known to man. To be honest with you, he's great. Really great.
And you can't beat that experience either. Like even in my playing journey or coaching journey now, if you knew what you knew as a player at the end of your career and the same as a coach, you've been in a hell of a position. So having people like that on board is invaluable. You cannot replace that experience.
Yeah, that's definitely something I've learned in the last couple of years. I've sort of transitioning into coaching myself. Just if I knew that then, I think, wow, I would have gone further than what I did. It was amazing. Funny moments. Do you have any funny stories you can share on from your time here?
I have to be selective, but there was one classic one with Mr Lydiard. I don't know how.
A couple mentioned about him already from some other.
Oh, really? The boys at school know Mr. Lillard, obviously, were they?
Yeah.
So we were under 16s at the time, and our fly half, who he wasn't a fan of tackling. Often me at scrum half and the centre would regularly have to cover him for him when he went missing. But we joined in. We were doing a session up at the fields, and Mr. Lillard had to join in because they were down a number. So I think we were practicing out the fence or whatever, and Mr. Lillard makes this outside break from deep inside his own 22, and he gets round our fly half. So everyone's eyes sort of light up, getting ready to get stuck into our 10 and rip it out of him for the next couple of months. And as he's herring away, Lillard's going really hard down the pitch. He gets over the 22, then the 10, he's getting towards the halfway. And our fly half's chasing him back and isn't giving up. He then dives. And if you sort of freeze frame that there with our fly half in midair, trying to dive to tackle Mr. Lillard, all the lads who were doing football on the back pitches over the other side of the hedge were walking up past the second team pitch there, I think on the left.
Yeah.
And I'm sure there was probably only like 30 lads or something. But in our heads now, when we tell the story, there's like 500 boys walking past the pitch. And anyway, press play again. And our fly half tackles Mr. Lillard right from behind. Bearing in mind, Mr. Lillard's going absolutely flat out. He stumbles for probably about 20 or 25 metres trying to keep his balance. And then, of course, he lands flat on his face in front of all the footballers. And the place went wild. It erupted. There was whooping, hollering, boys jumping up and down. Needless to say, Mr. Lillard was absolutely fuming and offered out our fly half in a 5 metre channel going one-on-one to steam over the top of him. But it didn't actually happen. But yeah, we talk about the story a fair amount.
Oh God, I can imagine it in my head, just scenes at Plough Lane.
That was incredible. Absolutely incredible. And of course, the story got exaggerated. So every time in the sixth form centre over the years, we'd hear the story and then it adapts and changes. Like Mr. Lillard then landed in the hedge at the end of the pitch, and yeah, everyone's encounters changed slightly.
I'm sure he looks back on it and laughs at it now, or he's still fuming. We never know.
Yeah, exactly.
3 words that would sum up Fisher for you.
3 words. I jotted down some notes earlier. I'll tell you what I wrote down earlier when I was having a think. I wrote loyal.
Yeah.
Because I really felt loyal to the school, and even now, like if you guys ever ask me, listen, can you do something with the scrum halves? Can you come back and speak to the boys? Or I feel a real sense of loyalty. So even when I'm going around keeping an eye on my academy lads in matches or looking out for new players, if Fisher are playing over on the pitch there, I'll go and watch that game. I remember at Rosin Park Sevens, I had some academy lads playing, and I was like, Fisher have got a game in 5 minutes up on that pitch. I better wander up over there. And I generally feel a real sense of loyalty, and that's what I still have with my friends now. So my closest friends are my group of 9, 10 lads that I was at school with. So I think loyalty is massive. Mm-hmm. I think underdog springs to mind. So we used to play against a lot of the big independent schools, and I remember even playing Wellington College and Millfield at the festival at Easter at the start of the year. And I just love that feeling of being the underdog. And we might have the facilities or the resources or the numbers that some of these other schools have, but we've definitely got aspects that they will never have. So like I said, we took a beating in the younger age groups. We know how to take that, and we know how to scrap for absolutely everything. We've got a very, very tight bond amongst the group of players. So I think loyalty, underdog, and then probably competitive. So no matter what we were doing, any sport, we were just massively competitive. And I think those 3 things took us a long, long way. So yeah, they're my 3 words.
With the underdog, do you think that drives players on more to want to succeed and want to sort of prove themselves to the private schools? It was obviously my first year here, and I walked into the Whitgift rivalry weekend thinking, it's just going to be another game of rugby, but boy, I was wrong. And you could really see that. That was the first time I saw that real Fisher underdog passion, and I was like, wow, this is an under 13 group, an under 14 group I'm watching. I'm thinking these hits are like a National 1 game, and I'm just like, wow, like completely gobsmacked by it. Do you think that drives them on a bit?
Yeah, massively. I mean, you scrap for everything, don't you? And any little victory you get, whether it's a turnover, where you drive someone back in a tackle, a counter ruck, you make a break, like you feed off that energy. And I think that's just so powerful. And I love being the underdog, even through back in the day when it was a Daily Mail trophy. We get to the later rounds, I think it was the quarterfinals, and again, underdogs, and every little thing you feed off as a group. And you definitely get energy from that. And I think it's massive.
Brilliant. So now we're going to move on and talk about your achievements in rugby and a bit of your coaching journey. So what's your biggest achievement in rugby, just quickly off the top of your head? Or what do you feel like your biggest achievement is?
It's like a few little milestones. I've obviously been Fisher first team captain was massive for me. England 18s again then was huge. But I think for me, I had so many injuries and operations, as you know, that the ability to keep coming back from them. So after every operation, I rehabbed it, whether it was 6 months, a year and a half. And every time I came back to play at the same level. And then it got to the point where I'd been out for like 2.5 years. And then to get back playing from that, when 2 or 3 surgeons had told me, listen, your knee, you're never going to play again. To get back from that and then to play in the Premiership Sevens for London Irish in, I think, 2014, I kind of thought that I may never get there again. But then one part of me never wanted to give up. So that's probably my proudest achievement, getting back to that level after so many setbacks. And it's proof that no matter what your age is, I think I was 27 when I got back to that level. No matter what your age is, like, you've got to keep working hard and never give up on what that end goal is, and you may still get there.
Talk to us about being, you just touched on it there, the Fisher first team captain. So how was that? How did you feel when you were announced as captain? How was it being the captain? Any advice for future captains you've got?
Yeah, I think it was massive. It's something that I had in the back of my mind. So, I was captain in the year before under 16s, and it's never a given that you're going to get it. But when you do get it, when Mr Davis had that chat with me, I definitely remember the feeling I had inside, and it was like, wow, it's a massive honour. And then to be captain of a team with all of your mates in makes it easier, because, you've played with them for a few years, you've got a great relationship with them. And I think they knew how much I love rugby. I love playing for the school. And as I said, we were always the underdogs. We took some beatings lower down. So I always worked incredibly hard. And I think if you're just leading the way with how hard you work, you probably don't have to say too much around that. And hopefully they just follow your lead. And with a couple of key players or senior leadership players within that group, they can support you. I just think you just do your talking by what you do on and off the pitch, even just the way you behave around the school, the way you train every day. You can't do it in bits and pieces. You can't train hard for a few weeks, then put your feet up and act like a clown, and then expect everyone to respect you again. Off field, on field, no matter what the session is, you've got to turn up with the same approach week in, week out.
That's really cool. So, did you, when you were at Fisher, did you have any setbacks? You've spoken about your injury setbacks sort of post Fisher, but when you were at Fisher, did you have any setbacks that you had to overcome while you were a player here, and what potentially you had to overcome to go on to the better things that you did?
Yeah, so there's 2 that spring to mind. There was a scrum half in the year above me who was also captain, Derry Coughlin.
Oh yeah,
he played England 18s. So Derry, of course, listen, he was the first choice 9 when I was in year 11. So when I played up, I think I played a few games at 9, but I played more in the centre, which was a challenge for me, which I'd never done. And then obviously when I got into lower sixth, Derry was still there. So it was up to me to try and get to his level, or even prove everyone that actually he's the captain, he's the guy in the year above, but how am I going to get ahead of him? So again, just the hard work came into play. I just remember repping out hundreds and hundreds of passes every single day. I designed so many practices, single hand, double hand, made it game specific, just to improve my pass, to make sure that actually the fundamentals of a nines player, I can make sure that they're trying to get to his level or better. Then, of course, I got an opportunity when he maybe had an injury or was away with England, and managed to perform fairly well. So that definitely put me in a better position come my time in upper sixth, because I'd have to fight. I'd have to improve my skill set. I had to get fitter, stronger. So that was probably my first ever real setback, in the sense that as a player originally picked ahead of me. And then in my upper sixth year, I had glandular fever, actually. So I didn't actually train that much during the week with the boys on field or in the gym in particular. So the conditioning side of things took a real setback for me. So physically, I probably wasn't in the place I could have been, especially then going on to England 18s and Hartbury College to study. So I was always playing catch up there after that year, but I just had to manage it to make sure I was eating well, sleeping well, as fresh as I can for games, and just putting everything into my recovery rather than spending time in the gym working on my physical development. I had to think and be smart in other areas, really.
We did actually have a clip of you both in the sports or some of the younger year groups practicing some box kicking.
Oh, right.
We couldn't get it to load. It's on an old drive, so I thought
really?
to show you that and get your thoughts on that.
Probably a kick I sliced as well, so luckily it didn't work.
I was going to say, but do you think other sixth formers, other Fisher boys should be doing that at the younger year groups as well? It looked, from what I saw of it, it looked really cool, but unfortunately couldn't get it on here. Yeah,
I think it's massive. And even now in our environment, I use either first team players or senior academy boys to come and coach the younger lads. Mm-hmm. And that's not because they're amazing coaches. It's a different voice for the players to listen to, which I think is great and freshens it up. And it's someone that has been on the same journey as them. So a 14, 15, 16-year-old can actually see, well, in 2-3 years, I could be a full-time professional like this lad. And he was in exactly the same position as me. So why can't I do it? And I think they find that really, really inspiring. And we get them in little groups for mentorship around similar positions. So back three, chat about what you do for your high ball extras, how do you work on your speed, your ability to beat defenders. And we literally put them lads in a room. We have a few questions on a piece of paper the lads might want to ask, but we leave the room and just leave it to them. And they have a discussion for 20 minutes, half an hour. And I think that's really, really powerful and probably undervalued and underused these days.
It's probably that empathy, isn't it? That being able to empathise for that particular position, that particular journey they're in at the moment. So it's probably, touched on that. Coaching. So what's going on at London Irish at the moment? How's that all evolving, as so to speak? I don't want to get you to tell me too much, obviously you can't, but just a quick insight of what's going on at the moment and what, from a professional coach's perspective, you'd be asking the boys to do during the lockdown and during their time that they're away from the training camp or the training ground, sorry.
Yeah, I think there's two things there. One was during the lockdown periods from, I think the first week of March, we played the last Premiership game up until, I think 3 weeks ago, the lads were back in full time. Mm-hmm. So that period, for professional players, they've never had to take command of their own training, or they probably haven't for a number of years. So they've always been used to turning up, here's your kit, here's your boots, this is the session you're doing today, this is what you have to lift. No, you should have this weight on that bar, you're running this far out on the pitch in this time. Very, very much prescribed. Whereas this period has been great for them to actually design their own weeks. They have to manage their time. They're obviously given advice and guidelines by the S&C, the nutritional support, the medics, etc., the coaches. But even things like their practice design in the garden, how can they be innovative? How can they practice their kicking or their offloading when they've only got mum and dad or a brother there? So that period for me was fantastic, that the boys are going back to developing things themselves, that playground style of learning, which is the best place. Because you design a game or a practice with the equipment you've got, the space you've got, you tweak and change the rules as you see fit. So that was brilliant. Now the full-time professionals, so our first team and senior academy lads are back in. Initially, it was like a military operation with the testing of the temperature, only 6 players in the gym at a time. They weren't allowed to pass a ball between each other, so we had static targets and practices designed around, wrist strength, moving the ball around the body, high ball catching, passing at targets. So again, just trying to be really innovative with what they could do. Mm-hmm. Now we're progressing into phase 2 where there's a little bit more interaction, still no contact, but the detail, every session's filmed. Players are only allowed within a metre or two of each other for, I think it's something like 6 seconds. So that footage then gets sent to Premiership Rugby and the government. And at any point they can look through that footage and say, okay, there's too much close contact from these players, there's too many staff stood together, or if let's say you tested positive for the virus, then anyone you'd been in close contact with within a training session, they'll look for the footage and say, okay, these 6 players, they're off for 2 weeks. So we have to be really, really careful with our first game being in August the 15th.
Yep.
we have to be very, very careful that we don't overstep the mark, so that then players are off and our squad's too small to play a game.
So that's amazing insight. I think that just hits the nail on the head what the times are like at the moment, and people worrying about rugby coming back. So it is coming back, but it's just a prolonged period. Any advice so you've already mentioned being innovative with how you can improve your skills away from the training ground. Any advice or anything you'd prioritize working on for the younger boys?
Yeah, like, listen, you can't beat the core skills, the catch pass, the kicking, the footwork. And when you're trying to develop them, you almost need repetition without repetition. So what I mean by that is, let's say I'm working on my spin pass. I'm stood here, or as a 9, I'm passing off the deck to a target or to a family member who's catching. You've got to repeat, obviously, a similar movement, similar practice to improve. But then how can you make it different? So is there a pad in the way that you have to pass over? Can we change the angle or the width of the pass of the person I'm passing to? Can I make it game specific? So am I coming in from a various angle? Do I have to get off the ground before I make the pass? Will I have someone trying to grab my arm before I get the ball away? So I would say repetition without repetition, and make the practices as game specific as possible. And yeah, listen, lads, these days, you need all players to be able to handle the ball forwards and backs. The way the game's going, the expansive, the speed of it, every player has to have the skill set to be an option. So I couldn't pick a prop now in my under-18 academy team who didn't have the skill set to help facilitate our attack. Because, these days, you hit that forward pod and they're pulling out the back to a 10 or a 12 to play an expansive game, or they're tipping it on, or they're offloading out a tackle. No longer do you have forwards who just trundle up and run into contact. You've got to develop that skill set. I think the fitness and athleticism is massive. So yes, you want to get bigger and stronger in the gym, but that's got to be able to translate to the pitch. So how quick are you? Mm-hmm. How fit are you to keep up with play and keep working hard so you can impact the game? And a big thing that I wish I'd learned when I was younger, which we focus on a lot with our younger academy lads, is around their movement. So not just their running techniques and movement patterns, but also their mobility and flexibility. So some of the lads who have been very much about getting bigger and stronger, they cannot get their body into the positions you need to for scrummaging, to get low to clean rucks, to get into good tackle positions, to have the flexibility and movement to get up off the ground and catch above the head. So something I wish I'd learned when I was younger is focusing more on those movement patterns to ensure I'm moving well on the pitch, but also my mobility and flexibility.
Those 2 points are really refreshing for me, and I'm sure Mr. Street and others here. So the catch pass and those basics, it's really refreshing to hear from a professional environment as well. They still work on that. And also, I don't know if you know, we've got an S&C coach now, Mr. Byers. He's working on all the flexibility, mobility and movement patterns. And some of the boys, they're responding really well to it, and some of them probably are thinking, why are we doing this? But it's really refreshing to hear that, because hopefully it will have an effect on them. That's amazing. Thank you for that.
Just on that, I think, like I said at the start, I wish I knew as a coach what I knew now when I first started coaching, and the same as a player. I remember my last 4 or 5 years, obviously I learned a huge amount about rehab from my injuries, but if I'd known the injury prevention movements, well, I'd have built that in my rest time in the gym or in my recovery day. Had I known more about recovery, mobility and flexibility, I only started doing that 2-3 times a week, and in particular, day after a game, as part of my recovery for the last probably 4 years. Well, I wish I'd known that when I was 16, 17, 18, and it would have prevented injuries. It would have made me feel better physically. I'd have been in better shape, and yeah, I think that's massive.
I'm totally agreeing with you on that one. The injuries I've had, you know the injuries I've had as well. So I wish I'd have known that as well. Thank you for all you've done so far, Patrick. We're just going to finish with a quick fire round. Sure. Literally, I'm going to give you a question and I just want you to answer.
Okay, I'm ready.
So, Plough Lane or Majeski?
Plough Lane.
Beating Whitgift or beating Quins?
Whitgift.
Great answer. Favourite food?
Steak.
Good choice. Hardest working rugby player you've worked with or played with?
Oh, great question. I was a flanker at Hartpury who went on to play for Gloucester, and I think went down to Exeter. Tom Rawlings, just unbelievable work ethic.
Nice. What's your favourite TV box set?
Oh, I'm not a big box set man. I'll be honest. Well, I enjoyed Luther. I saw that series,
Okay.
but I haven't watched many box sets and shows, to be honest.
Okay. What's your greatest rugby memory?
Greatest rugby memory. I feel like I have to say a Fisher one.
You don't have to. Just generally.
Of course, beating Whitgift. But generally, it would be how proud I felt running out for London Irish after X amount of operations and having my family there in the crowd. It was just, incredible feeling. And that was my last game as well.
And what do you miss, if anything, the most about Fisher?
About Fisher, seeing my mates every day, enjoying every single day at school, because I genuinely did. Yes, there's schoolwork to do and things, which is essential, but you're with your mates, which is fantastic. And the rugby play, you'll never play with a group of teammates that you spend day in, day out with like that, who are genuinely some of your best mates for life. So I miss that massively.
Patrick, thank you for coming on today. It's been great and some great insight for our boys. Hopefully they'll take something away from this, and hopefully we'll get you back on again talking about X, Y, and Z. We'll get you into school if we can. I know it's Quinn's patch, but hopefully they'll let you come in. Thank you very much. Have you got any last words you want to say to the boys, or any advice you want to give the boys?
Just listen, lads, I love the school. I love my time there, and I owe a huge amount to John Fisher. And if you ever need advice on whether it's clubs, academies, position-specific work, what to do with your careers, even if you're getting in something like strength and conditioning or analysis and you want experience in a professional environment, you've got my contact details, so you can pass on phone number, email, or if you see me at a game, come and say hello. Roslyn Park Sevens, I'll probably be on the side of the pitch cheering you boys on quietly. Come and say hello, and any advice or help I can give, I'm more than happy to. And as I said, hopefully I can come back into school soon and help out where I can.
You always know I'll come and say hello to you. I've got a lot of time for you. Thank you so much. We're going to stop right there.